We good, Jim? No, there it is. All right, I see it. All right, well, I'm gonna welcome everyone to the Wednesday, June 2nd meeting of Youngstown City Council. Does everyone have an agenda before them? All right. Councilman Ray, are you ready to go through the agenda?
I am, Mr. President.
All right, we do have a speaker today as well, so we'll start under communications and we'll do communications and reports, and then we'll go to our speaker. So under communications, item number 1,
Receive and file.
2,
Receive and file.
3,
Receive and file.
4,
Receive and file.
5,
Receive and file.
6,
INS and planning.
7,
Receive and file.
8,
Receive and file.
9,
Permission granted.
under reports, number 10,
Receive and file.
and number 11.
Receive.
All right. We do have one speaker this evening. We have Dominique DeSanti, owner of the Torch Bar and Grill. Dominique, thank you for joining us. You have 3 minutes to address whatever issue you want to discuss. And we ask that you keep it to 3 minutes. And again, no personal attacks or anything of that nature, which I'm sure you understand already. So you have the floor, and I'll let you know when the time is up.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dominique, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of Isabella's Market LLC in regards to the Torch Club Bar and Grill on the west side. I want to share a little bit of history about the Torch Club. It's been an important landmark in the Youngstown community since the 1920s. Ella Fitzgerald was playing at the club when she was married in 1947. It's also hosted other famous musicians through the years, including Nat King Cole, the Mills Brothers, and Frankie Lane. Isabella's Market LLC is a family-owned business that has been operating the convenience store and liquor license adjacent to the Torch since 2013. Located in a food desert, it has been our continuous goal to work with the community and offer a complete assortment of food products. In 2018, we purchased the building, including the Torch, and have substantially invested into the building in order to preserve and update. If we were to lose the liquor license associated with the Torch, it would join countless other buildings in the city that have been abandoned and fallen into disrepair. This would not only affect our own livelihood, but of our family, but of the local employees who work for our business. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families who are suffering from the tragic events of the May 23rd shooting. We will continue to help authorities and anyone else as they sort through the events of that night. We do not believe that we are the cause of those events and believe them to be a community-wide issue that will not be solved by closing the Torch. On that night, we had 6 security guards employed to monitor the bar. We also patted down all of our patrons at the door to prevent violence inside of our premises. And we want to note that the shooting actually happened in the parking lot and not inside of our bar. Since our inception and operation in Youngstown, we have also been plagued by crime. A few years ago, my brother-in-law was held at gunpoint at the cash register. 2 months ago, we had an incident where our glass doors were shattered. Somebody tried to take our ATM. We've had a lot of vandalization and robberies ourselves that we've had, and we understand this to be a community-wide issue. And Youngstown itself has had dozens and dozens of shootings so far this year that had nothing to do with our bar or our business or our way of operating. We were not the cause of these deaths, nor will closing the Torch Club help the community of Youngstown. Instead, we believe it would be detrimental as it would affect the tax revenues of the city and others who benefit from our patronage. And I just want to close by stating that we love Youngstown. We love the culture and the people who call it home. Right now, we have voluntarily closed our doors as we work through our issues. And we want to continue to work with the city to make it a better place for everyone and do anything in our power to make this a better place. We will continue to do that. And we're just asking to please reconsider revoking our license today because it would be very hard on us, our family, and our employees.
All right, well, Dominique, thank you very much. You
Thank you
came
for
in
letting
right
me
at,
talk.
what'd you say?
I said, thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you came in right at 3 minutes. My timer just went off, and so we appreciate you. And, we hope everything ultimately works out for everyone involved.
Thank you.
And again, thank you. You're free to watch the rest of the council meeting on the city's website. But again, we thank you for your participation in addressing us.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Mr. President,
Was that Councilwoman Davis?
yes, before she
Yes.
leaves, I'd like to ask her 2 questions pertaining to the building.
Uh-huh.
Yes, does the retractable stage still work, and is the clamshell still there?
They are, yeah, they're both still there. And so we still have all the murals too on the walls. We don't have the revolving bar anymore. That was taken out before we purchased the building, because I think at one time the bar itself would kind of move around. It was called a merry-go-round, but the clam is still there, as well as all the historic artwork in the building and the retractable stairs. And we actually have one of the original microphones too from back in the day when the players used to play, and the ticket holder.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dominique.
Thank you.
All right. I think I lost my gallery view. There we go. Councilman Ray, you ready to continue?
Yes, Mr. President.
All right. Let's go through resolutions number 1.
Suspending consent.
Resolution number 2.
This would be suspending consent with a separate vote was requested.
Separate vote. Number 3.
This would also be suspending consent with a separate vote.
And number 4.
Suspending consent with a separate vote.
All right. And under ordinances, item number 5,
Suspending consent,
6,
suspending consent,
7,
suspending consent,
8,
suspending consent,
9,
suspending consent,
10,
suspending consent,
11,
suspending consent.
12,
12 is suspending consent with a separate vote.
12 is a separate vote too.
Yes.
All right. Number 13.
Number 13 is moving to the Safety Committee.
Number 14.
Number 14 is suspending consent.
Number 15.
Is suspending consent.
Number 16.
Suspending consent with a separate vote.
17.
17 is moving to the Safety Committee.
18.
Suspending consent.
19.
Suspending consent.
20.
Suspending consent.
21.
Suspending consent.
22.
Suspending consent.
23.
Suspending consent.
24.
Suspending consent.
25.
Suspending consent.
26.
Suspending consent.
27.
Suspending consent.
We're signed out of committee. Ordinance 21-152
Suspending consent.
and ordinance 21-165.
Suspending consent.
Let's go back through from the beginning under communications. Item number 1,
Receive and file.
2,
Receive and file.
3,
Receive and file.
4,
Receive and file.
5,
Receive and file.
6,
INS and planning.
7,
Receive and file.
8,
Receive and file.
9.
Permission granted.
Under reports, number 10,
Receive and file.
11.
Receive and file.
No public comments. Under resolutions, item number 1,
Suspend and consent.
2,
Separate vote, suspend and consent.
3,
Separate vote, suspend and consent.
4.
Separate vote, suspend and consent.
Under ordinances, number 5,
Suspend and consent.
6,
Suspend and consent.
7,
Suspend and consent.
8,
Suspend and consent.
9,
Suspend and consent.
10,
Suspend and consent.
11,
Suspend and consent.
12,
Separate vote.
13,
Move to safety committee.
14,
Suspend and consent.
15,
Suspend and consent.
16,
Separate vote.
17,
Move to safety committee.
18,
Suspend and consent.
19,
Suspend and consent.
20,
Suspend and consent.
21,
Suspend and consent.
22,
Suspend and consent.
23,
Suspend and
24,
suspend and consent.
25,
Suspend and consent.
26,
Suspend and consent.
27,
Suspend and consent.
signed out of committee, ordinance 21152
Suspend and consent.
and 21165. Did you say, did you say suspended consent, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, I didn't hear it. All right, you ready to go into the meeting?
Yes, yes, Mr. President.
All right, it is 5:43. This meeting on Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021 is now called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilperson Adamzak,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Hughes,
Here.
McNally,
Here.
Oliver,
Here.
Ray,
Here.
Turner,
Here.
and Kitchen.
Here. There were no minutes to be approved in the previous meeting. So under communications and reports, item number 1.
Mr. President, I move that under communication and reports, item 1 through 11 be received and filed, INS and planning, and permission granted.
Second.
Motion carries. Under resolutions.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, number 1.
Honoring Peace Officers 2021 National Police Week and National Peace Officers Memorial Day.
Councilman Ray.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules and council and place ordinance number 1 for council for passage pursuant to the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call on the suspension.
Resolution, Adamzak,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
Rules of council have been suspended. Are there any remarks or questions? Roll call on the passage.
Adamzak,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the passage.
Resolution number 1 has been passed. Under resolutions, number 2,
Objecting to the renewal of liquor permits for Downtown Circle LLC.
Councilman Ray.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place resolution 2 before council for passage.
Second.
Roll call on the suspension.
Adamzat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
The rules of council have been suspended. Are there any further questions or remarks? Councilman Oliver.
Yeah, Mr. President, I just want to, before making this decision, I just kind of need more information. I need to know how we go about deeming which organizations should have their liquor license revoked. And for me, particularly in my ward, I've only had situations where black and brown businesses have always come up for their liquor license to be revoked. I've been working with this particular bar owner, as I did with the Southern Tavern, and I just need a little bit more information on this situation.
Who are you asking for information from?
I'm asking for information from the law department, possibly the police chief or vice squad, just to get a better understanding on how we go about making our decisions on liquor license. Do we work with our bar owners at all to, hey, if something is going on, we give them a warning, or, I just need some type of an explanation before I go about just taking black and brown business license
So
for the same
Attorney
situation.
Limbian on or Chief Davis? I don't know if that's a law department question. Is Attorney Limbian on the line?
Through the chair, yes, I am.
You want to
I can
respond to that?
detail, I'm sorry, sir.
No, did you have the floor? You want to respond to Councilman Oliver?
Yes, if you don't mind, I can detail some of the things, but Attorney Lance is on the phone and she has worked directly with this. If Ms. Lance can get on and detail for Councilman Oliver some of the issues.
Okay, Attorney Lance, are you on the line?
I am, sir.
Would you like to respond to Councilman Oliver?
I spoke to Councilman Oliver regarding potential objections for establishments in his ward. 2 were presented to him. Those files are made available. We did review information in those files. He did agree to the objection and sponsored this one. There was a second one that he did not desire at this time. The Downtown Circle had previously been presented to him for objection based upon the continuing problems that have happened there over the years, including underage drinking, crowds, fights. It's been designated as a hotspot due to the number of calls for service. I don't want to go into any further particulars as these are matters that would venture into legal discussion. However, in this instance, he did indicate that he had worked with him in the past, but this time he was prepared to object to this location. However, the other location that was presented to him, he had not had the opportunity to work with and did not object to that. As it relates to the police department and how they make the determination, this has been an evolutionary process for the 20 plus years that I have been with the city. It used to be a police-driven assessment based upon a much more robust police department with many more officers assigned to a vice unit because our numbers were greater, where there was a whole liquor division that just did liquor establishments dealing with alcohol and gambling offenses. And then there was a separate drug enforcement division in that vice unit. Right now, that unit is made up of individuals that cross over and do both. how they assess what is subject to abatement is a question probably more appropriately posed to the vice commander. Over the years, however, they used to, when I started doing this 20 plus years ago, they used to come in annually at the typical time for these objections is November. They would come in prepared with all of their stats related to all of the bars and say, these are the ones that have been the trouble of the hotspots. Those predominantly used to be up around the university, and there were quite a few on South Avenue. So that, however, over the years, we have engaged counsel more often in these because it is their objection. So we sought input. I have traditionally always sought input. When I was the prosecutor, I would also keep track of statistically what we were looking at as the establishments that got all the tickets on the weekends, that had all the crowd problems that we were seeing in court. We're not seeing that type of enforcement this year simply due to COVID and those type of restrictions. However, what we are seeing is when there is a problem, it is under a microscope, or it's rather large because we see big crowds and that. And I think that is what you're seeing reflected in the objections this year. They were places that caused significant disruption to the neighborhood or the surrounding area. In the case of downtown, to the downtown business, took an inordinate amount of police response time. But the police department can more appropriately address how they ascertain specifically what the problems are. I will tell you that it is the law department's responsibility, and we have reviewed the evidence presented and feel that there is credible evidence that there would be a likelihood of success on the merits based upon these objections. And we have to certify that before we send it to Columbus. Further, we have in the past objected to licenses renewals, because this is just a renewal objection. This is not revoking their license today. And there's been an opportunity to work with those establishments before that hearing. And the state is in some instances amenable to that.
Thank you, Councilman Oliver.
Thank you, Dana, for that explanation. Usually in a case like we did with Southern Tavern, there's an opportunity to work after the fact or after the resolution is already passed. And I'm not saying it's the city's responsibility to make sure businesses do business appropriately, but do we build a case on these bars, or do we see an incident that happens and then go in and say, hey, this is what happened. We got somebody underage drinking. You need to, tighten the reins on this, make sure things are okay. Or we had some fights or whatever. Or is it just build a case after case after case until it gets to the point where we're revoking liquor licenses or objecting to renewal? Because the reason I asked the question, because since I've been on council, it's been mainly Black and brown business establishments that have gone up for revoking their licenses, even though you have similar or the same situation having happened at some white-owned establishments. So, and with no objection to their liquor license, even as of recent. So I'm just wondering, is there a warning or a way we work with bars to be able to get them to come in compliance and make, not only the neighborhood or, their patrons feel safe, but in order to stay in business, do we work at all, or do we feel like that's just not the city's responsibility?
If I may, in direct response.
Yes.
So there are multiple factors here. So we issue citations, or the state issues citations through the Ohio Investigative Unit when there are offenses involving underage drinking and things of the like. That is considered sufficient notice. Having had that happen once, when it happens repeatedly after that, I think that the entity has been put on notice. This is a regulated use. It's also a licensed activity. So there is an inherent understanding when you're a licensed activity that you have to conduct yourself in a certain way. The state does conduct extensive training or makes available training for bar owners, for liquor establishments, as to how they need to conduct themselves. They also let them know what what will cause them to suffer an objection or a revocation of their permit. As it relates to building a case, that happens in a multitude of ways. They can either receive multiple citations, and then we have created a history. There can be one huge event that's caught, like in one of the instances where neighbors in the neighborhood, people in the neighborhood, residents in the neighborhoods, houses are getting shut up because of what we call an attractive nuisance, what is something that causes people to congregate in an area that disrupts the neighborhood. What we face as an older northern city so oftentimes is the fact that what we used to have were neighborhood bars where people would walk after work and go have a drink. Those establishments are still there. There are liquor licenses that are there, but they're operating more as a club or as a bar where people drive to, and large crowds come and take over what is a residential neighborhood. We have seen this repeatedly throughout the city. It used to predominantly be on the south side. Most of those licenses have been revoked over the years. Jolly Joe's, for example, was one that was in a neighborhood, and it was the loud music and the cars and the people and those type of instances that caused that to happen. So we look at these in a myriad of ways. This isn't an abatement where we were padlocking. This is not for what happened in the bar necessarily. This is for what it causes in that neighborhood. And a lot of times it's complaint driven from the neighbors because the neighbors bring that to the legislative authority or to the police attention. So as it relates to how we work with that, the law department doesn't work with entities. We would be happy to provide people with the information that's available through the state website. But it's not necessarily the police role, but it's perhaps something that community police would look at. But that's really beyond my purview in the law department.
Thank you, Dana. Councilman Oliver.
Just one more thing. A lot of times I hear from bar owners that, this was under the previous chief, so this not you, Chief Davis, but under the previous chief, it was always our, officers. So the bar owners would inform me that officers were encouraged not to work their bars or not to work their establishments. Is that still the case, or are police officers more free to be able to work some of these establishments in order to prevent certain things from happening or prevent crowding in, in certain areas, whether it be in the neighborhood or whether it be in downtown? I know certain insurances are, supposed to be put in place, which I've learned with the last incident, in order for Youngstown police officers to work these establishments. But are they free to be able to do this? And the second question is, as downtown is concerned, I really think we need to put a plan in place for the way downtown is growing and the way people are coming downtown. If we want to present downtown as a place where the entire city is welcomed to come and congregate and enjoy, I think we need a plan in place for that to happen, because that is what's happening. And especially with the end of this pandemic, more people are coming out, more people maybe don't know how to act because they drinking again and they, they having a good time. And as you know, when the bars let out downtown, basically everybody is in one place. And I often see that the police have a hard time controlling those crowds in order to escort them out of downtown. So I'm just wondering if we can get together and put together some type of plan for downtown's growth, as well as how do we manage the exiting of the bar club crowds after 2 a.m. downtown?
So is that a question and comment directed towards Chief Davis?
Yes.
Okay, Chief, you want to respond?
To the chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if I heard correctly, I think Councilman Oliver was asking whether officers were permitted to work some of these establishments. And the answer would be yes. And there is a bonding or license that they must have, that the bar owner would have to provide for the officers to work that. And this happened several months ago at Club Utopia, where there were 4 officers willing to work that establishment that night, but they failed to provide the insurance for the officers to work. Fortunately, we did have officers on standby outside of the establishment that night and they walked right into an active shooting scene. Thank God none of the officers were hurt that night. Also, the same thing with the Torch Bar. Officers were willing to work. We had officers ready and available to work the establishment that night, but the owner failed to provide the insurance. We did have officers outside of that same establishment that night, but they were redirected to the downtown area because of fighting downtown. And then the shooting occurred shortly afterwards. So yes, it is an issue that, that we're facing and that we're going to have to deal with. If I can, if I can work, I'm willing to work with council to see what we can do to resolve this.
Thank you. I'll be in touch. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Chief. There was see Anita. Anita, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of questions if Dana is able to answer these. Dana, has that location, the circle, been cited for underage sales and things like that more than 2 times in the past 2 years?
I know that if I may in direct response, I know that they have been cited multiple times. I'd have to look at the time frame as it relates to that. But in addition to that, there are some other infractions that I'm not at liberty to discuss at this time, but significant issues besides the underage.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So the rules of council have been suspended. There are no other remarks. So roll call on the passage on resolution number 2.
Adamzak,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
No.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
No.
Ray, Councilman Ray,
You're on mute, Councilman.
Yes.
Was that a
was
yes?
that a yes?
Yes. It was a yes.
Okay. And Turner,
No.
4 yeas, 3 nays.
Resolution number 2 has been passed with a 4-3 vote. Under resolutions, item number 3.
Objecting to the renewal of liquor permits for Isaiah Poindexter doing business as Bonanza Bar, also known as All City Sports Bar.
Councilman Ray?
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place ordinance number 3 before council for passage. Resolution 3 before council for passage pursuant to the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call on the suspension.
Adamzak,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
Rules of council have been suspended. Are there any comments or remarks? Councilman Ray?
Just would like to note that this bar is currently closed. There was a year abatement, a case that was in the Mahoning County Common Pleas Court that due to the activity at the bar, it was a nuisance abatement. So this will be the next step in the process, this objection.
All right. Roll call on the passage.
Adamsak,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
No.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
No.
5 yeas, 2 nays.
Resolution number 2 has been passed with the 5-2 vote. On the resolutions, number 4.
Objecting to the renewal of liquor permits for Alawain Isabel Market LLC doing business as Torch Club.
Councilman Ray?
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place ordinance, resolution number 4 before council for passage pursuant to the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call on the suspension.
Adamsak,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
Rules of council have been suspended. Are there any questions or remarks? Councilman Ray?
Mr. President, in this objection, again, this is an objection. The liquor holder does have the right to the due process and the liquor hearing. Objection is based on the recent activities and the tragedy that happened a few weeks ago and events leading up to that and the intensity of use of that establishment, the disruption to the neighborhood. Just wanted to make that note with that.
All right. Councilwoman Turner?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say, with all of these objections to the liquor license, I'm not 100% convinced that as a city, we're doing our due diligence on all fronts to ensure that we are supporting these businesses in an equitable manner and ensuring that they are not being scrutinized differently because of the crowds that they serve. I understand that in some cases they present a nuisance in the community, but how are we mitigating these things when we get the calls? So I just don't feel that I'm comfortable enough to say we can begin the process of stripping them of their livelihood at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call on the pass. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Hughes.
And maybe this is an input from the police department, if I can get one though, but I think that if we respond, and we just went through probably the worst time in our lifetime, this pandemic last year and up to now. And it seems to be that across the country, these unusual things as behavior patterns are going on and we're having this. I don't know if we are factoring this in to this equation or to, deny or remove the liquor from them, but perhaps maybe the police chief can give us a comment whether or not he thinks that that last shooting or last incident, I didn't mean to say shooting, that occurred up there wasn't all totally a fault of the bar as much as was there a side effect from the pandemic behavior. And I understand as I look at it across the country, everything it's kind of screwed up with this. And we seem to be going with a big axe here, and I understand what happened. I'm not trying to belittle it at all. But if the police chief can make a comment of if any of this, the behavior or the incident might have been, the last incident might have been contributed to or the pandemic might have played a part in events that occurred.
Chief Davis, would you like to respond to that?
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, Councilman Hughes. I believe that there is some pent up energy. I believe that the pandemic did play a role in what happened several weeks ago. However, gaining the notoriety of being one of 17 mass shootings that occurred in the United States, Youngstown was in that list. We made that list, one of 17 mass shootings that occurred that weekend. I don't know what the other cities did, but I think this is something that that needs to be addressed here in the city of Youngstown, and this is one way of doing it.
Thank you, Chief.
A follow-up, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I get that. Is the police chief saying that if we shut this down, that won't reoccur someplace else, or those is that what I'm understanding? By shutting this down, we won't have this again?
Chief.
Through the chair, we won't have it there.
Are you sure? Through the chair?
Through the chair, yes.
Well, we're going to move on. I don't know if anybody can definitively answer that question, but Councilwoman Davis.
Yes, through the
and
chair.
then we're gonna go to the vote.
I have a question to the chair. Chief, prior to 2020, this past year, were there complaints or incidences of shootings and so forth there at that bar? Prior to 2020, prior to the pandemic?
Through the chair, I don't have that answer.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilwoman Davis?
He doesn't have an answer, I'm in concurrence with Councilman Healy. I'm ready to go forward.
All right.
Hello, this
If
is
somebody
Jeff.
can mute their line, somebody has a dogs and something going on. We can mute your line, please. Councilman Ray, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was going to respond to Councilman Davis because she's asking about activity, and then I heard Attorney Libyan trying to come in. I'm not sure if he was, but Councilman Davis, to my knowledge, the bar was primarily not operational and did open up during the pandemic. And this recent string of events was in the banquet room part of it, where they were actual events, aside from just the regular routine activity of the bar. The bar is relatively small, but the intensity starting back in March, in the video footage that neighbors are showing, and the parking complaints, and just the level of disruption in the neighborhood. And I do know that Vice had went out and spoke a number of times trying to work with them. And as the chief indicated, that night, we did have a strong police presence hoping to keep things at bay. And they were called and diverted to another call downtown. And that's when the mayhem broke out. So, and that Sunday morning, going and talking to residents and looking at bullet holes in their house and people telling me they were laying on their floors. Going through that whole process, it was pretty traumatic. And most of the folks just said, we just want our neighborhood back. We just want this place to stop. And I think this is our step in the process. They will be afforded due process to do something else or present something, obviously in a liquor hearing. It's been my understanding on my time of council, usually the burden is so great on proving this that you have to have overwhelming evidence. And generally the liquor commission sides on the side of the bar owner. So the operation has to be pretty far out bounds. At least that's been my experience. So
Through the chair.
Who is this?
Thank you, Mike.
This is Jeff Limbian. I think, President of Council, if there was a question directed at me, I think I can answer it now.
No, it wasn't directly. It wasn't for you. No.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. Councilman Oliver, and then we're going to go to the floor for a vote up or down on this. Councilman Oliver.
If you want, I can give my time to Councilwoman Adamsack. I seen her hand up. I already spoke.
Oh, I didn't. Where's she at? Hold on. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilwoman Adamsack.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick follow-up question in regards to what Councilman Ray just stated. The incidents that are occurred in the banquet room. So is there a private event going on at that time? Like, is somebody rented the facility?
Councilman Ray?
It was my understanding, and maybe Vice go in, but those were being regular events run by the same promoters. They were running, it was continual. It was the same folks operating it continually, based on the information that I've have and looking into the map. So it was traditionally historically used as a banquet facility, but it was being used repeatedly for events with the same folks operating it.
Thank you. So just as a comment, so it's similar to what happened at Utopia. It was an event that was being held, so it's directly tied to the event rather than to the establishment itself.
Councilman Ray?
Councilman Abzak, I would say that, however, there was a pattern of the events occurring regularly with the same promoter. So it was the venue of the they were operating it in that fashion. Not like a one-off event where Utopia was running just specifically for a purpose. This was occurring on a regular basis.
All right, I'm gonna give Councilman Oliver his opportunity, then we are going to the floor for a vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I just want to ask the question to all of us, like, do we essentially put out of business every business that has an incidence of a fight or violence of any kind? Because I mean, I remember years ago, a guy rolled past and he didn't like a guy that was at my car wash, and he shot at his car at my car wash years ago. So that had nothing to do with me or my business. That was a beef between those two individuals. It just occurred at my car wash, just like the Austintown Walmart shooting. So do we shut down Walmart? Are there alternatives to what we can do, or do we shut down every establishment in the city that is associated in any way with any incident that happens? I think that's just a question we got to ask ourselves, because bars and restaurants, anywhere where there's liquor, there's always prone to have fights and other incidents of violence. So do we shut down everywhere? Because there's bars in the city that have fights that people are throwing chairs and tables downtown Youngstown, and I've never seen them come up for any type of liquor rejection. So I'm just saying, how do we gauge this stuff? How do we do this moving forward? Just a statement. Thank you.
Well, maybe there's a need for a committee meeting to discuss this at a later time, because obviously there's a lot of discussion and questions on it, and it won't be resolved tonight, but may not be a bad idea to schedule something to go forward and hash out that plan, Councilman Oliver. Right now, we are at the point where we are going to vote, so roll call.
Mr. President, is there a time constraint on this? Mr. President, is there a time constraint on this objection?
Time restraint on what?
On this objection, can this resolution be moved to a committee?
If I can, through the chair, Councilman Kitchen, respond directly.
Yes, but we are at the point of voting it, or the motion is on the floor. We've already had discussion, so now we have to either vote it up or down, Councilwoman Davis, but I'll let Attorney Lance say what you need to say.
Yes, there is a time constraint. The deadline is today to pass the resolution. I just want to be perfectly clear as it relates to the question that this liquor objection to renewals are based on substantial and credible evidence that we will sign an affidavit to that effect. We present them to council because of the deleterious effect that they have on neighborhoods. It is not just because there was a fight. It is not just because there was a driveway. It's because the attractive nuisance brings people to that location, causing disruption for the residents. We have to be perfectly clear. There are people that live in these neighborhoods, people that are directly affected, and that's what the liquor objection is for. And further, we are over-issued in liquor permits in this city. We are oversaturated based on our population, which is what drives a lot of these issues, because there's a competition for business. So I just want everyone to understand what the renewal process is, different from the abatement, different from those situations. This is something that directly affects the neighborhoods, and that's why these are available.
Thank you, Attorney Lance. Clerk, let's call the roll on the passage.
Adamsat,
No.
Davis,
No.
Hughes,
no,
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
No.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
No.
2 yeas, 5 nays.
Resolution number 4 has been defeated with a vote of 5-2. Moving on to ordinances, ordinance number 5.
Authorizing the Board of Control of the City of Youngstown to enter into a contract with Northern Ohio Peterbilt doing business as Allstate Ford Youngstown for the purchase of 2 new crew dump trucks.
Councilman Ray,
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place ordinance 5 through 12, 14 and 15, 18.
nope, wait. 12 is a separate vote, you said.
5 through 11. 14 and 15. 18 through 27. 21-152 and 21-65. Before council for passage pursuant to the consent agenda.
second,
Roll call on the suspension.
Adamsat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
yes,
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
The rules of council have been suspended. Are there any remarks or questions? Roll call on the passage.
Adamsat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
yes,
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the passage.
Ordinances 5 through 11, 14 and 15, 18 through 27, and ordinances 21-152 and ordinance 21-165 have all been passed. Under ordinances, ordinance number 12.
Authorizing the Board of Control of the City of Youngstown to enter into a grant agreement with Ohio Environmental Protection Agency.
Councilman Ray,
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place item number 12 before council for passage pursuant to the consent agenda.
second,
roll call on the suspension.
Adamsat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
yes,
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
The rules of council have been suspended. Are there any remarks? Councilwoman Davis.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members of council, this piece was presented to us yesterday with no further notice given to us. And it's always sounds good for us to take the money when money is given to us. But I think we need to be cautious when we accept things like this, because when it says take the money and then we'll work it out later on, and we invariably end up paying a whole lot more than the $60,000 that this application is for. And I think with something that comes to us that was and the administration knew about back in February, and then they bring it to us today with a warning that this has to be done by Monday. And yet we are not able to do our due diligence. And this is the kind of thing that we have to stop approving, because we have a habit of just saying, take the money, and take the money. I think we need to go up there and take a little, if this is so important to the administration, it should have been brought to us beforehand and not brought to us at the last minute. and then we have to pay for it down the road with some unforeseen ancillary cost that's involved. This has to stop. That's what I say. We need to stop this kind of stuff now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Davis. Roll call on the passage.
Adamzat,
Yes.
Davis,
No.
Hughes,
yes,
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 nay.
Ordinance number 12 has been passed with a vote of 6-1. Under ordinances, item number 13.
Authorizing the Board of Control of the City of Youngstown to enter into a professional service agreement with J. Saul Campbell and Company.
Councilman Ray,
I make a motion, this was moved, item number 13 is moved to the Safety Committee.
second,
ordinance number 13 has been moved to the Safety Committee. Under ordinances number 16.
Authorizing the Board of Control of the City of Youngstown to waive formal bidding pursuant to section 735.051 of the Ohio Revised Code in order to approve a purchase order for an amount not to exceed $48,000 for the emergency demolition of 15 Oak Hill.
Councilman Ray,
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place ordinance number
16.
16 before council for passage pursuant to the consent agenda.
second,
Roll call on the suspension.
Adamzat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
yes,
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
Rules of council have been suspended. Are there any further questions or remarks? Councilwoman Adamzak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to restate what I said at the finance meeting yesterday. Although I feel that the contractor does need to be paid for work completed, I do not agree with the process of this particular demolition, and consequently, I feel we have to find other means of payment, not through legislation. And additionally, council defeated this last year. So I just still don't even agree with it coming back before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call on the passage.
Adamzat,
No.
Davis,
Excuse me, but Mr. President, I did have my hand up to make a remark.
What's your remark, Councilwoman Davis?
My remark is to remind all of us that the city had given its word that this would be taken care of. And we're under an obligation to make sure that people do not get stiff. The administration was incorrect, may have been incorrect, I don't know, but I don't think we should be punishing the everyday worker or the company because of a mistake that the city made. We shouldn't be holding the company and holding up their money, and they paid their workers, and here we are not paying our bill. I think it's bad on our part. Thank you, Mr. President.
And what's your vote, yes or no?
My vote is yes.
Hughes,
yes,
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
No.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
No.
4 yeas, 3 nays.
Ordinance number 16 has been passed with a 4-3 vote. Under ordinance number 17.
Increasing appropriations by $114,000 in Police Projects Reserve Fund.
Councilman Ray,
This is make a motion to move item 17 to the Safety Committee.
second,
Ordinance number 17 has been moved to the Safety Committee. I believe, did we cover all of those, clerk? I believe we did.
Yes, that was the last one.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our agenda. First Ward, are there any other comments or remarks?
Yeah, I didn't get to make my remarks for the number 16, but
Okay.
our
Sorry.
we have as elected officials have a moral, ethical, and professional obligation to our citizens. If we can run around just tearing down any property, what in the world is we here for as elected officials to protect our citizens? I mean, this is in Greenwood, and they tore down those peoples and burned their businesses because they knew they can get away with it and because those people were worthless to them. This building was torn down for literally no reason, in my eyes, after it being stated that the building should not be torn down. The building was not unsafe, and I don't fault any of I don't fault the demolition supervisor. I don't fault the fire chief. I don't fault any of them because they all work at the pleasure of the mayor. This building was not in a condition to be torn down. I still don't know the reasons why it was torn down, but as the councilman, the representation in my ward, in the first ward, I said I didn't want this building torn down, and it was torn down the next morning. It wasn't even on, it got put in legislation by accident. They was all surprised when Dave Skolnick from the Vindicator called me and asked me how I felt about the building being torn down. And I'm like, it's not getting torn down. He's like, yeah, it's in the legislation package. I've talked to the mayor and everybody right there at Trustle's house. They're like, no, that's not happening. That's not happening. I look up my packet and I'm like, it's in the packet. They literally tore the building down the next morning. Our citizens count on us to look out for them. So that's why for me, it was a no vote. Because this guy got his building torn down. No matter how much people don't like him, no matter how much of a bad property owner he is, he still got rights. So any one of our properties, I'm gonna go home and check all my properties tonight and make sure everything good, work in order, so my stuff don't get torn down for no reason. Those are my comments. Watch yourself.
Second Ward, Councilman Hughes.
The only comment I'll make about the previous ordinance is that I get that, and it is true. I voiced my opinion at the finance meeting, and I think it was wrong the way even the second opportunity to vote for it. I voted to pay the first time, and I voted pay the second time because you can't change what has already happened. Debt has incurred, and there's no way I can see that us getting out of the debt. I see that. But I say this, and I say this as warning to the administration. I will never vote again in favor of doing any of this if they continue in this practice. You know, that's my comment.
Thank you. Third Ward, Councilwoman Turner.
I don't have any comments today.
Thank you. Fourth Ward, Councilman Ray.
I would just say that it deeply saddens me that my colleagues did not support the objection to the liquor license at the Torch Bar. This is in my neighborhood. I heard the gunshots. I watched the ambulance go by my house with the bodies. And this is a matter of public safety. And I apologize to my constituents. I felt like I failed them today. Nothing further.
Thank you. Fifth Ward, Councilwoman McNally.
I just want to say that, I agree with everything Councilwoman Davis said earlier regarding, just the timeliness of pieces of legislation coming to us. And I don't want to get off on that foot again. And I know I said it on Tuesday at the Finance Committee meeting as well. So just to reiterate, let's please do better moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Sixth Ward, Councilwoman Davis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We today we covered a lot of things. But there's been a consistency. I think that we asked this administration time and time again to do better and do a better job of communicating with us. Now we'll hear, well, the phone works both ways, but one thing about it, it does not work both ways. When department heads have projects and things in the works, and they know these things are in the works, and they don't advise us, because there's no way in the world that we should be calling each department head and say, hey, you got anything in the work? You got anything coming down the pike? Or we have to act as mind readers. We need to have the department heads do their diligence to get to us the information so that we can do our jobs as informed as we possibly can. As informed as we possibly can. You know, I voted my way today. I had to change from my first vote about that building because I realized if we didn't pay this bill, we were punishing an individual who had no involvement, no skin in the game, other than just doing the job. And I just can't see punishing someone who is doing their job correctly because the administration may have dropped the ball. So, you know, so I want people to understand that we're going to ask this administration time and time again to please do a better job communicating with us, informing us well in advance instead of bringing this stuff to us at the last minute, because you're going to start seeing things voted down. And it's going to be voted down because of its timeliness. That's all I got to say, Mr. President. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman Davis. 7th Ward, Councilwoman Adams-Act.
Thank you, Mr. President. I concur with my colleagues, so I'm not going to be redundant and state the same thing. However, on that topic, I would like to, since the mayor is on the meeting, I would like to let him know what we talked about the safety committee meeting last time, and that it is a priority of ours to obtain a fleet of new vehicles for our community police officers. So if you could keep that in mind as you and the administration are working on a plan for the expenditure of that $88 million, and just to keep us in the loop as it was stated at those public meetings that we had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I just have one comment. Bob Burke is not here, but Aaron, and you're here. So I do want to say he's been like my hero these last several weeks. And I just want to say thank you to everyone over at Litter Control and the whole team, because I've had some really bad nuisance properties, and it was just a phone call to get them taken care of. And it has been, I'm say weekly, if not 2 times a week, I'm calling and asking if he can get things taken care of for me. And it is happening. So I just want to make sure that I let you know, Aaron, and the whole team know that Bob is doing showman's work. And I really appreciate all his hard work and dedication to the city.
Thank you very much.
Chair, thank you, Samantha. I will pass that along to Bob Burke. Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, and I hope everyone has a safe and cool rest of the week. It's going to heat up, but is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.